Elon Musk shocks by reading love letter to future wife and reveals millionaire secret. The crowd at the Silicon Valley Gala froze. Every eye locked on James Carter as he stood in the spotlight. James, the untouchable tech giant whose name alone made headlines. Tonight, beneath the glittering chandeliers and the swirl of designer gowns, something was about to crack wide open. The air was thick with rumors, ambition, and something darker nobody had guessed. Elon Musk had just slammed down a glass and leaned into the microphone. James is about to do something nobody expected. Murmurs rippled through the room like wildfire. He held up a yellowed envelope, creased from years, and the words on it were impossible to ignore. A love letter. Not just any love letter, the kind whispered about in secret, tied to the woman who would soon be his wife. But this wasn't just about romance. As James pulled the letter from the envelope, his hands trembled, just a little. Cameras click. The crowd's smile stiffened. The letter, it carried shadows. Shadows from a childhood nobody knew about. Haunting memories, tangled with bright success. A past that shaped not only James's empire, but the shaky bridges he'd built with people around him. And then, across the room, eyes sharpened, locked on James with a mix of fear and fury. His ex-wife Maria, a stellar tech attorney, fierce in court and unforgiving in life, sat frozen. Her heart pounded like a war drum. If this letter came out, revealing the truth behind the tycoon's polished mask, it could shatter everything. James's legacy, sure, but her career too. The stakes weren't just high, they were life and death for them both. James's chest tightened. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. The room held its breath. The world watched that tiny, monumental moment. Would he unleash the truth? Or lock it away, bury it under fame and ambition like he always had? He opened his mouth. The letter lifted to his lips. Silence. Then, a sudden crash. Glass shattered. A sharp shout sliced through the tension. Heads turned. From the crowd, a figure moved forward. A familiar face from James's past. Someone he'd long tried to forget. The room spiraled. Whispers climbed into a roar. This wasn't just a love story unraveling. This was a complicated maze of secrets, dragging them all down. James's vision tunneled. Could he still hold on? Could love survive if all this truth spilled out? Or would the darkness from years ago swallow his future whole? The night tightened like a noose. Who would stand with him when everything fell apart? And what new disasters waited in that storm of past and present? Ready to break free? The question hung there, unanswered. What happens next? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without notice. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content that's coming. And since you're here, drop a powerful like. That really helps me with the algorithm. Oh, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. James's vision was blurred, heart pounding like a fierce drum. The room erupted into chaos. as whispers morphed into angry shouts. A figure stepped out of the shadows, someone he thought he'd never see again. It was Connor, his estranged brother. The crowd gasped, tension thickening the air. Connor, disheveled and wild-eyed, looked like he'd crawled out of a storm. "You think you can just bury your past, James?" he yelled, pointing an accusatory finger. "You're standing there, ready to wipe your sins clean with a love letter? No way!" James's hands trembled, the letter dangerously close to slipping from his grip. The world around him faded into a blur. Memories surged back, each one sharper than the last. Connor was right. There were shadows. Shadows that James had tried to paint over with success and wealth. Secrets buried deep, tied to that love letter. Maria's expression hardened, fear twisting into fury. She shot a challenging look at Connor. "How dare you ruin this moment? Do you have any idea what the stakes are?" "Stakes?" Connor laughed bitterly. "This isn't just about a display of love. It's about who you really are, James. It's about—" "Stop!" James shouted, his voice breaking through the noise. "You don't know what you're talking about." Could his brother really unravel everything in front of these people, exposing the ugly truths he had fought so hard to hide? But Connor stepped closer, breath ragged. "I know a lot more than you think. The love letter isn't just for your future wife. It's a guide for the lies you've spun around us all. You've built this empire on a foundation of deceit." Gasps echoed in the lavish hall. James's chest tightened. The truth his brother spoke was a knife, sharp and cold. Memories of their childhood haunted him. Lost dreams and broken promises. The haunting whispers of missteps and failures he had locked away. Suddenly, the crowd surged forward, cameras flashing wildly, as if they were engaged in a frenzy. 100 eyes zeroed in on James, demanding a reaction, waiting for answers. The air buzzed with anticipation. Would he collapse under the weight of this revelation? "James!" a voice called out from the back. The sound cut through the tension like glass breaking. It was his father's voice, thick with emotion. "Tell them. You owe them that much. You owe them the truth." James's heart sank. His father, who had been silent for so long, whose quiet approval he had desperately sought, now standing in judgment. James clenched the letter, the love letter that felt less like a promise of a future, and more like a ball and chain holding him back. His mind raced. Could he really let everything out? Would he risk losing the woman he loved and the empire he built? In that charged silence, his brother held his gaze, urging him to see the reality just beneath the surface. The darkness of the past swirled around him, demanding acknowledgement, a burden that felt too heavy to carry up against the light of the truth. He breathed slowly, grounding himself in the moment. What would he choose? To expose the lies and face a reckoning, or to keep the facade standing, risking everything that mattered? The silence screamed for resolution. But as he opened his mouth to speak, another loud crash erupted from the front of the room. A fire alarm? People screamed, the lights flickering ominously. And amidst the panic, a familiar face broke through the crowd. A woman from James's childhood. Someone long thought lost to the shadows of time. She locked eyes with him, and everything shifted. In that instant, life, as James knew it, shattered. Who was she? What dark secrets did she carry? The stakes had never been higher. Everything was about to change. Would the truth set him free? Or would it bury him deeper in the labyrinth of his past? As the glass shattered, the crowd instinctively flinched, eyes darting between the chaos and James, who stood paralyzed behind the microphone. Time seemed to stretch, a taut line ready to snap. Then, from the shadows, emerged Chloe. Her presence sliced through the air. She was a ghost from James's past, one he wished had stayed buried. "James!" she called, her voice sharp, echoing through the silence like a gunshot. Heads turned, whispers ballooned, gasps filled the space, thickening the tension. Maria's icy stare burned into James's back. He could feel her presence, sharp and accusatory, an unspoken warning that this evening could drift into an abyss. Chloe stepped closer, her eyes hungry for the truth. "You can't hide anymore. Everyone deserves to know." Her words were like an electric shock. James's heart raced, blood pumping furiously. He had hoped to keep his past a well-guarded secret, but here was Chloe, standing ready to unravel him. The love letter suddenly felt like a dagger, one that could cut deeper than anyone imagined. "Chloe, no!" he whispered, desperation thinning his voice. But she pressed on, her gaze unwavering. "You think that letter is just about love? It's about the lies, the manipulation. Your empire, built on secrets." The crowd shifted, a collective intake of breath, stunned by the revelation. Maria's expression darkened, her lips pressed into a tight line. She was a woman who thrived on control. This was chaos, and chaos was her worst enemy. The room buzzed, filled with a sinister energy, as people leaned in, desperate for the scandal to unravel. "You're not the man you pretend to be, James." Chloe's voice rose, cracking. "You're hiding something monumental. You and I both know it." The air thickened, choking him. Memories flooded back. Flashes of laughter, betrayals, a promise made in darkness. Fists clenched. James's mind raced. Could he let it all out now? Could he risk everything? The past felt like a weight on his chest, and for the first time, he realized maybe it was time to set it free. Then, just as that thought cracked open, something worse happened. A flash of blue lights pierced through the gala, a siren's wail erupting into the tension, cutting through the whispers into a shocking silence. The doors burst open. Officers swarmed in, eyes scanning the crowd. "James Carter, you're under arrest!" Gasps erupted, ripples of disbelief washing over the guests. Maria's face drained of color. Shock turned to horror as people stumbled back, whispers spiraling into frenzy. The reality of the moment slammed down like thunder. Every thought broke apart in his mind. Arrest? For what? The truth about him was dark. But was it criminal? Shadows twisted around him, eager to latch on. How could they drag him down when he had only wanted to rise? As they approached, the truth loomed heavy, catching in his throat. Would they expose the secrets he buried to protect his empire? The love letter could bring everything to light, his feelings and failures. Panic surged. Who liked him? Who would back him now? Would Maria stand by him or let the flood sweep her down too? Why? James finally shouted, his voice trembling as he turned to Chloe, anger mingling with desperation. What did you tell them? Chloe's lips quirked, a hint of satisfaction in her eyes. Everything and nothing. The truth is complex, isn't it? The officers moved closer. Time stopped. James stood at the edge of his world, unsure what lay beyond. Questions rippled through the air. What would be exposed? What would crumble? With his future hanging in the balance, the crowd's breath caught. The night was far from over, but the storm was only beginning. James stood there, heart racing, as the officers edged closer, their authority palpable. James Carter, you're under arrest. The words sounded like a hammer, striking glass, shattering the stillness. But before he could process this, Chloe stepped forward again, her defiance on full display. You need to understand, James, she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. You've built your entire life on lies. You can't just erase your past with a fancy letter and a wedding ring. Fear and anger churned within him, a tempest he couldn't contain. The truth twisted in his gut. Hadn't he fought to protect everyone from those shadows? Wasn't he trying to build a future free from his family's dark history? The crowd alternated between gasps and murmurs, but the air was electric. Maria's eyes were cold, her face a mask of fury. James could see her weighing her options. She was a fighter. Would she stand by him or step back into the safety of her own world? James, his father's voice boomed again, desperation slicing through the frenzy. You can't keep hiding. You owe everyone the truth. A part of him wanted to flee from this moment, to run from the memories threatening to drown him. Then turning to the officers, he tried to regain his composure. What's the charge? He questioned, his voice steadier than he felt. Fraud, one officer replied coldly. The word dripped like poison into the atmosphere. But the moment shattered again. The crowd parted like waves, revealing another figure behind the officers, their faces pale and shaken. It was his mother, eyes glistening with tears, a look of betrayal etched across her features. Mom? James's voice cracked, disbelief consuming him. She hadn't appeared at family events for years, a specter of the past. And now, here she stood, her presence an unexpected earthquake. James, she started, her voice trembling. You need to stop. You don't know what you're doing. Confusion twisted in his chest. What do you mean? What do you know? Suddenly, everything shifted. The officers lowered their voices, glancing between James and his mother. The room seemed to grow silent, every ear straining to catch whatever was to follow. Your father. Her words were heavy like lead. He's not who you think he is. The empire you've built is linked to something that could shatter everything. You're in deeper than you know. James felt a chill that cut deeper than any betrayal. The building blocks of his life quivered, a legacy tangled in deceit, just waiting for the right moment to collapse. The crowd leaned in, eyes wide, eager for the next act of this tragic play. What are you talking about? His breath caught. Shadows of truth began to unfurl around them. Whispers of corruption and unresolved grievances swirling like smoke. Don't say more, his mother warned, fear lacing her words. It's too late for me, but not for you. You don't realize the danger you're in. Just as she unleashed the truth, Chloe lunged forward again, her anger renewed. You think you can save him? You don't know what you're asking for, James. Your father's past. Rig, it's all connected, and now you're tangled in it. The crowd gasped again, eyes darting between the three of them, all watching the pieces of his life fall apart. Stop! James shouted, feeling the ground slipping beneath him. What are you saying? And then it happened. The lights flickered one last time before going completely dark. Gasps turned to screams. Panic erupted. In the chaos, a loud thud slammed into the ground, as if something heavy had fallen. In the sudden darkness, chaos reigned. Shouts and cries echoed. Someone screamed, "Get down!" James shouted instinctively. When the lights flickered back on moments later, a figure lay crumpled on the floor, surrounded by stunned faces. The crowd erupted in panic once more. Whispers danced around, mysterious and heavy. Who was down? What had just happened? James's heart raced. Whatever had happened next would change everything. A new layer of darkness unfolding. The air crackled with uncertainty. Would this unravel him completely? As he tried to comprehend the chaos swirling around him, one question hung firmly in the air. Who really was he? James's mouth opened, but no words came out. He stood there, the letter trembling in his grasp, as chaos erupted around him. The crowd was alive, whispers morphing into shouts. Faces shifted from expectation to confusion and fear. "Stop!" A voice sliced through the noise. It wasn't Maria, and it wasn't anyone else in the spotlight. The figure who had stepped forward from the shadows was none other than Max. Max, James's estranged brother, the one he had buried deep in the past, a past filled with betrayal and heartache. Gasps echoed through the hall. Max? Here? After all these years? He looked different, angrier, his eyes blazing with a fire that sent shivers down James's spine. "Don't do it, James!" Max shouted, his voice strong and almost pleading. "You have no idea what you're messing with." The air thickened. What did he mean? James's gaze flickered between his brother and the letter, confusion swirling in his gut. He could feel the tension snake through the crowd, all eyes locked on this unexpected drama. Maria's face paled. She was just about to say something when Max turned his fierce gaze on her. "You too! You think he can hide behind his fortune? Behind this charade?" His voice turned cold, as cutting as glass. "What are you talking about?" James croaked, his heart hammering. He felt cornered, trapped in a web of secrets that were swirling tighter around him. Was this about the letter? Or something deeper? Max took a step closer, his fists clenched. "That letter? You think it's about love? It's a bomb waiting to explode. Between us. Between you and everything you thought you knew. You don't get to decide how the past stays buried." James's breath caught the letter, the love letter. It felt heavier in his hands, darker in meaning. Could it unravel everything? Had he been blind to it all? His heart raced, pounding against his ribs. the walls of his carefully constructed world seeming to crumble. Max continued, intensity radiating from him. You don't even know what she really did, do you? Maria never forgave you for what happened. None of us did. The excerpt he threw out landed like a slap. Maria's expression shifted, anger flaring in her eyes. But James was still reeling. What had she done? What had Max meant? Cameras clicked incessantly, capturing the scene unfolding as a storm brewed. Rumors would spread like wildfire. There was only silence now, broken by the sudden shattering of glass. Someone in the crowd dropped their drink, eyes wide with shock. Then James felt it, a crack in his emotional dam. Every hidden fear, every secret past, came crashing down. Tell me, he pleaded, voice raw and breaking. Tell me, Max, what happened? Max stepped back, horror mixing with a grim determination. You really don't want to know. But when the truth comes out, and it will, you won't just lose everything, James. You'll lose her, too. Suddenly, a chilling realization swept through the room. The whispers intensified. People started to look at each other, confusion mounting. The weight of Max's words bearing down on everyone. The tension electrified the air. James felt it tight in his throat, a lump forming that he couldn't swallow down. He glanced at Maria, her face a mask of panic and anger twisted together. Now, everything hung delicately in the balance, a potential bomb set to explode not just in his life, but for everyone around him. What other secrets lay hidden, waiting for the right moment to tear apart their fragile world? The moment stretched, twisting into an unspeakable dread. What path would he take? Would he dare to uncover the truth? Or would he run and let it all shatter around him? The room was a cauldron of confusion and fear, mounting, climbing, ready to spill over. And deep down, James realized with horror, the real battle was only just beginning. James stood frozen, caught in a moment that felt both fragile. The room buzzed with tension, and all eyes were on him. Just as he was about to speak, the crash echoed again. Shattered glass scattered across the polished floor. Everyone turned, confusion washing over their faces. The figure stepping from the shadows was his estranged brother, Liam, someone he hadn't seen in years. A wave of nausea hit James. Liam was a dark chapter he desperately wished to forget. They had parted ways after a devastating argument that split their family apart. How could he show up now, amid this chaos? Liam's expression was a storm. His eyes were wild, a mix of desperation and retribution, a tempest that could only brew after years of silence. You think you can just pretend everything's fine? He shouted, cutting through the murmur of the crowd. You're a fraud, James. You've built a castle on lies. James's heart dropped. The room, once filled with intrigue, now simmered with disbelief. Maria's jaw tightened, anger and worry blending in her eyes. Few knew the depths of their shared history. But now it felt like everything was racing back to the surface. James stammered, Liam, not now, but... Liam wasn't done. He held something in his hand, and his voice thundered above the crowd. This letter isn't just about love. It's a confession. A damn confession. You think you can make us forget? You think you're just a visionary? You're hiding the truth. The crowd gasped collectively. James's stomach twisted. What truth? The letter? What the hell was Liam talking about? Do you want to know what he did? Liam advanced, reckless with rage. Do you want to know about the real reason we had a falling out? It's all tied to that letter. A wave of whispers erupted. Eyes darted, and cameras clicked relentlessly. James clenched the letter in his hand, feeling its weight pulling him down. Enough! James shouted, panic swelling in his chest. He felt the world closing in. What are you even talking about? Liam stepped closer, his voice dropping to a chilling whisper. You really don't remember? I was there, James. I watched you take everything from me. The dream we built together. Our family. It wasn't just you who suffered when you left. It was me too. Shock swept through the crowd. Faces turned pale, and eyes widened in disbelief. James felt his pulse in his throat. He had buried that past so deeply. Then Liam pulled the letter from his pocket, waving it like it was a fatal weapon. You think this letter will save you? The truth is in here. The truth about your betrayal. He tore it open. The delicate paper crumpled under his frantic hands. As the ink smudged and the paper tore, a single photograph slipped free, floating down like a leaf on the wind. It landed softly, face up, revealing a shocking image. James, with a woman who didn't just look like a stranger. She was familiar. A haunting memory. The resemblance was undeniable. The room erupted. Gasps mingled with frantic whispers. Is that? Dot. James's breath stalled. All the air seemed to vanish as the pieces began to fall into place, like dominoes. No, 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 he muttered, shaking his head. The truth hung between them, heavy and unyielding. The lines separating the past from the present blurred dangerously. Had everything he'd built, every connection he had made, been built on a lie? Just when he thought everything was falling apart, the ground gave way beneath him. The crowd held its collective breath, waiting for his next move, waiting for the real James Carter to emerge from the ashes of his carefully crafted life. What would this mean for him, for Maria, for the future he thought he had secured? And just like that, the stakes had changed completely. The night spun out of control, and now James was at the center of a storm darker than he ever imagined. What other secrets still loomed in the shadows? As the sharp crash echoed through the air, James's heart seemed to lose its rhythm. His eyes darted toward the source of the noise. A woman staggered into view, her face pale, shaking as she struggled to stay upright. There was a moment of collective confusion, then gasps rippled around the room. It was Emily, James's former assistant, the one he hadn't seen in years, until now. "What are you doing here?" he whispered, his throat tightening. Emily's breaths came fast. Her skin glistened with sweat. "I have to tell you the truth," she gasped, her chest heaving. The letter wavered in James's hands. Secrets trembled in the air like a live wire, threatening to spark chaos. "Get her out of here!" Maria's voice sliced through the unease. She stood, fierce and rigid, her eyes blazing daggers at Emily. But James was rooted to the spot, his pulse roaring in his ears. "Emily, please," he pleaded, desperation crepiendo. "Not here." But Emily had already taken a step closer, words spilling out in a rush. "It's about your father, your mother, They never told you who you really are. The room plunged into a stunned silence. The words hung there, heavy and charged. James's mind spun. His father? His mother? What could possibly be so terrible that it had to be kept hidden for years? Alarmed whispers erupted. What does she mean? Is he adopted? Oh my God, this is nuts! Maria's expression shifted from anger to dread. You can't be serious, she exclaimed. The crowd's eyes darted between them, confusion mingling with shock. James's throat closed. He felt the world tilting beneath him. His fortune, accomplishments, everything built on a shaky foundation of lies. What do you know? He demanded, his voice barely steady. Emily's gaze broke, her resolve faltered. I have proof, your real lineage. You're connected to something much bigger than you think. This letter holds everything. The letter slipped from James's fingers, fluttering down as he took a step back. His whole life, all those successes, tainted with a brush of deceit. How could they do this? He thought, the betrayal hitting him like a punch to the gut. Suddenly, a roar broke through the chaos. Enough! Boomed Elon Musk, towering above them, eyes flashing with authority. This isn't the time for games, Emily. There are lives at stake. James's vision blurred. He felt like he was drowning in secrecy. You knew? He accused Elon, shock coursing through him. You knew and didn't tell me? The air crackled with tension. This isn't about you, James. This is bigger, Elon began. But a flash of movement caught everyone's attention. A stranger, a tall man with an intense gaze, burst into the room. This isn't the end. It's only the beginning. His voice was smooth, dripping with an ominous calm. You need to listen to her, James. The truth will change everything. The crowd gasped, and the room felt electric with confusion and fear. What truth? James wrestled with the sudden wave of emotions crashing over him. Betrayal, anger, fear. He glanced back at Emily, and the weight of his past loomed larger than ever. How deep did this rabbit hole go? Who could he trust? The crushing silence returned, stretching towards infinity. James stood at the center, heart racing, immersed in a storm of uncertainty. What was this new reality that threatened to unfold? Questions spiraled in his mind as he felt the walls closing in. Would love survive in a world built on lies? Would he ever truly understand his past? Or was this just the start of something more dangerous than he had ever imagined? His heart thudded hard in his chest, a drum urging him to question everything as darkness loomed ahead. Would he fight for the truth? Or were some mysteries best left buried? James stood there, a storm brewing inside him. Emily's words echoed, curling around his brain like vines. He could hardly breathe. Everything he thought he knew about his life felt like sand slipping through his fingers. The room was frozen, voices hushed, anticipation coiling tight. James, the truth! Emily pressed, eyes wide. You can't turn away. Not anymore. With a mix of anger and desperation, James gripped the edge of the podium. What truth? Do you think you can just walk in here and declare everything I built is a lie? Around him, guests shifted uneasily, glances darting back and forth. Maria's face was a portrait of fury, masked by confusion, while the assembly of voices murmured like wind through leaves. Then, in that fragile moment, chaos struck again. It happened so fast. A loud bang, the sound ricocheted, piercing through the tension. A window shattered, raining glass like glimmering shards of crystal. Everyone gasped, bodies flinching. James turned toward the sound, sheer panic flooding him. The world became a flurry of movement, people screaming, ducking for cover. In that chaos, someone lunged forward from the shadows. A figure, a hooded silhouette, slipped through the crowd towards the stage, eyes glinting ominously in the light. James blinked, breath hitching. It was Connor, his estranged brother. "Get away from him!" Connor shouted, voice rising above the panic. "You've made a mistake, Emily!" What was happening? James's heart hammered as Connor's gaze locked onto him. "You need to listen," he urged, desperation thick in his voice. "It all ties back to Dad. You don't know the truth about him. Enough!" Elon's voice rang out, cutting through the fray. "That's enough!" But the chaos continued. Suddenly, the sound of sirens pierced the air outside, the flashing lights illuminating the room through the windows. The energy was frenetic, heart-stopping, and then James felt it, a chill creeping up his spine. Emily, now terrified, shouted, "Connor, stop! You don't understand the danger!" Danger loomed thick around them. He could feel the weight of their secrets pressing down, hard, almost suffocating him. The panic twisted like a tight knot in his throat. Just then, a whirring sound filled the air. Yelling erupted as a drone zoomed through the space, hovering low before its camera clicked on James. The crowd gasped, the tension magnifying as their phones lit up with the live stream. He was becoming the center of a digital storm. This wasn't just in the room anymore. James, the urgency in Emily's voice cut through. "Please, you need to stop hiding." Everything seemed to freeze. The drone whirred back, peering down, capturing the whirlwind of emotions. And then, amidst the chaos, Connor's eyes softened. "James, it's not just about the Empire," he said, his voice catching. "You're in more danger than you think. Our father, he made deals. Bad ones." James's heart sank, hope ebbing away, replaced by a fresh wave of dread. As secrets swirled like black smoke, a figure from the past emerged from the crowd. Liam took a step forward, breathless and furious. "Do you know what you've awakened?" The noise dimmed, all eyes fixated on Liam. "You don't just play with fire, James," he pressed, jaw clenched. "You're awakening monsters!" "Monsters?" The word echoed like a specter, sending shivers down James's spine. Then, as if summoned, the lights flickered violently, one last time, before plunging the entire hall into darkness. The panic hit again like a tidal wave. In the dark, voices rose higher, frantic whispers clawing to surface. The drone's light flickered off, and with it, the room was swallowed into a terrifying silence. Then came a scream, a bone-chilling, sharp cry that echoed through the dark. "No, not him!" James's breath caught. Was it Maria? Was it his father? Who was in danger now? The lights sputtered back on, washing over the chaos. And there, in the melee, James stumbled back, paralyzed. A shadow lay sprawled on the floor, motionless, surrounded by wide-eyed spectators. The revelation struck him hard. Who lay there was not just an innocent bystander. His heart dropped like a stone. And as the collective gasp rose around him, everything changed. Questions rushed through his mind. How could this happen? His chest tightened. The very foundations of his world rocked. And in that moment of horror, all he could think was, would this unravel everything? What had he stepped into? The night was just beginning, and the shadows of unseen truths began to gather once more. The shadow on the floor stirred, flickering like a candle in the wind. James's heart raced as he took a step closer, terror tightening its grip. The air felt heavy, almost suffocating. He wanted to shout, to scream, but the words died in his throat. Instead, he was rooted in place, shock holding him captive. As the lights cast pale glows on the scene, a chorus of gasps erupted. Emily knelt beside the figure, her hands shaking, fingers brushing against the stillness of, "Is that?" Maria's voice cracked. The horror in her eyes mirrored his own, wide and frightened. No one wanted to say it, but it was clear. It was Connor, lying there in a pool of darkness, unresponsive, lips parted but silent. The stunned crowd was a tableau, faces frozen in shock, whispers bouncing like echoes in a canyon's. Emily looked up, tears in her eyes. "I didn't mean for this to happen!" She shouted, panic rising, but before James could respond, the walls seemed to tremble. A collective hush fell over everyone. Footsteps, heavy and urgent, had started approaching from the shadows. "Step aside." A security officer, grim-faced and serious, forced his way through the throng. "We need to get him out of here." "No, wait!" James shouted, his voice cracking. "He needs help! What happened?" "Please." But as the officer reached Connor, time twisted. A sharp breath escaped Connor's lips, and suddenly he bolted upright, eyes wide and wild. He looked around, confusion spilling over his features, and then locked eyes with James. "What? James? What happened?" His voice was hoarse but alive, igniting the chaos around them. The crowd erupted into murmurs of disbelief, reliving the moment all over again. Emily staggered back, her expression shifting. "No, you shouldn't be awake. This is bad." "Bad?" Connor's gaze darkened. "What the hell did you do?" But as the tension mounted, a new sound filled the air, a low, rumbling bass that thrummed through the venue. And then, like a bolt from the blue, the hall doors swung open again. A group of figures, dressed in dark suits, marched in. For a brief moment, their presence scattered the air like autumn leaves in a tempest. Then it snapped back to a grim reality. At the front stood a woman with striking features, long raven hair framing a face that demanded respect. She held a report in her hand, the paper crinkled and stained. "We need him. Now!" Her voice sliced through the tension, commanding silence. James felt a jolt. "Who the hell are you?" Panic surged, but he couldn't bring himself to shoot her down immediately. There was something regal about her presence. "I'm here for the truth," she stated flatly. "And he," she pointed at Connor, "is the key." The crowd recoiled in shock, divided between fear and intrigue. Gasps echoed, eyes darting between her and the crumpled figure on the floor. "Connor?" Emily breathed out. "You told them everything?" "No, he didn't," James interjected. A wave of betrayal, bubbling. What does she mean? "Ha ha ha!" But Connor shook his head, a mix of defiance and dread crossing his features. "You need to listen, James. I've been working with her. Everything, it ties back to our father." "Stop!" James shouted, emotion swirling like a tempest inside him. "You can't drop this bombshell now. You just came back from—" But the woman, undeterred, continued. "There are records, evidence. Everything you've built, every success, it's all tied to him, to your father." A weight of her words landed heavy, crashing into him. James's breath hitched, his world spinning. "So, what is it?" James demanded, fear creeping into his voice. "What else haven't I been told?" But the woman stepped closer, her gaze sharp. "He hid a secret, a legacy tainted with betrayal and violence that could ruin everything. And it's not just about Connor. There's more." As the stakes mounted, another whisper rippled through the crowd, a shattering realization hitting them. James felt each breath catching as the pieces started to align in a horrifying way. Just when James thought everything had collapsed, a new truth began to form, one that threatened to change everything he thought he knew. "You must decide, James," she said, her tone low but urgent. "Will you embrace the burden of your past, or will you let it drag you down?" A hush fell, tension snapping like a drawn bowstring. In that moment, James understood. The night had only just begun. The tension was palpable as the dark-haired woman stepped forward, the weight of expectation heavy in the air. "I need everyone to listen closely," she said, positioning herself between James and the tumultuous crowd. "You're all tangled in this web, whether you realize it or not." James felt the weight of eyes upon him, 1,000 questions lingering unanswered. "Tell me what my father did," he demanded, voice trembling but fierce. "I deserve to know. Betrayals, dark deals, a legacy tied to organizations that twist around ambition like a snake," she said, steady. "But it's time, James. The past has a way of breaking through the surface, unearthing truths you thought would stay buried." The crowd grew restless, murmurs buzzing, shocked faces now uncertain. Maria placed her hand on Connor's shoulder, the previous anger fading into a shared concern. For the first time, they were all linked, not by love, but by the fear that the truth could dismantle everything. Just then, the lights flickered ominously, the tension thickening the air. "No more hiding," Emily whispered urgently, her voice breaking. "You have to choose. The power has been in your hands." James drew in a sharp breath, years of unresolved anger and lingering fear bubbling to the surface. Could he really take that leap into the unknown? Would the truth protect or destroy him? I have to confront him," he finally said, looking at Connor. "We can't sweep this under the rug anymore." "Yes!" Connor exclaimed, fury and relief battling in his eyes. "We put an end to this family curse once and for all." The woman nodded, a flicker of approval in her unreadable gaze. "Good. But remember, revealing the truth will demand sacrifices. Are you willing to lose everything?" "I've already lost too much," James said, steeling himself. "And if this is a fight for my future, I'm ready." With newfound purpose, he turned to face the crowd. "I won't back down. Whatever my father did, I refuse to be his legacy. I choose to break free." A wave of murmurs washed through the room, the tension finally giving way to something different. This shared moment felt powerful, like the first breath after a long struggle. But just as relief began settling in, the ominous sound of sirens echoed closer. A stark reminder of the stakes. The doors swung open, displaying a lineup of authorities poised to take action. They swept in with vigor, an undeniable force demanding justice amidst the chaos. James took a step back, heart racing. This was it, the moment he had both feared and longed for. The truth had arrived like a tempest, and its impact was both exhilarating and terrifying. As the officers moved forward, the crowd split apart, confusion and urgency overtaking the atmosphere. James caught a glance from Maria, a silent pact forming between them, intertwined with both love and uncertainty. "Stay strong," she whispered, leaning closer. "We can figure this out together." "I won't lose you," he replied, voice steady, determination curving his resolve. But that lingering uncertainty never left him. Even as he took a step toward the unknown, shadows of doubt chased him, hampering his every move. As the chaos intensified, James realized that the battle to uncover the truth wouldn't just reshape his future. It would test every bond he held dear. And just like that, the night spiraled into an electrifying uncertainty, leaving every heart in the room hanging on the edge. What truths would emerge from the dark? Now, before you go, don't even think about leaving without doing these vital things. Smash that like button like it's hot, and give us the love we deserve. Also, if you want to be part of this journey, you have to subscribe immediately to the channel. I'm telling you, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Your support is crucial. So go ahead and flood the comment section with your thoughts and predictions about this wild ending. And I mean it. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to.